I logged into Star Citizen's live servers last week for the first time since early January, and I immediately noticed something was wrong with my game. All of the lighting was different. The textures themselves looked different. The way materials reflected light, the way shadows fell in places that used to be flat and washed out, all of it had changed. I alt-tabbed out and checked the patch notes looking for whatever massive graphics overhaul I'd missed, and there was nothing. It wasn't in the Evo COD-E builds I had tested. No announcement, no Inside Star Citizen segment, no marketing push. CIG just did it. Whatever they changed it without telling anyone, and the result is the best-looking version of Star Citizen that has ever existed. To me, beyond crafting being added to the game, this could have been the big marketed feature of the patch. For years, my biggest secretly held concern about Star Citizen's long-term viability was that other engines were going to leave them behind. I don't mean in terms of tech features, because server meshing isn't something easily copied due to its enormous complexity and deep integration, but in terms of graphical fidelity and that wow factor. Unreal 5 has been pushing the bar for what a modern game looks like, and Star Citizen, for all its ambition, was starting to show its age in ways that were hard to ignore. The lighting was serviceable, but not outstanding anymore. The textures, especially on clothing and armor, were always somewhat flat and lifeless. The scale of the world made it work, but the graphics were just fine. But fine doesn't cut it when you're asking people to spend money on a game that's been in development for over a decade and competing for attention against titles that look like they were rendered yesterday. I think it's safe to say that my concern is gone now. What I'm seeing in 4.7 stands up against anything running in Unreal 5, and I'm not saying that for clickbait or comment engagement, but I'd be tickled if you did get in the comments. Anyway, I say it because I spent an hour walking around Orison and Seraphim Station, absolutely stunned and looking at the game like it was my first time seeing it again. Well, whatever CIG did under the hood, and I'm forced to speculate here because they didn't document it, the game has moved from flat uniform lighting to what feels like source-based illumination. Walk into a darker section of any station and you'll see it immediately. Every single light source comes from somewhere now. It has direction, it has fall off, it's casting shadows that make sense. Areas that used to be lit like a department store, which is probably a dated reference as nearly all the malls closed years ago, but humor me because I'm in my 40s, those areas now have depth and atmosphere because the light is realistic. Look at the NPC in this clip. Behind the counter, there's a mixture of dark and light, and his positioning sways between both. Incredibly, you can see his face in both light and shadow. That's wild. And in this clip, the clerk at the counter is clearly being lit by the desk lamp next to her. It's not baked into her clothes either. If a player blocks that light, it changes the scene. I wish I had the knowledge and experience of the guys from Digital Foundry. I don't know if this is ray tracing. It might be, but probably isn't yet. It's not the full global illumination they teased, because ship lights still don't penetrate from outside a hangar to the interior of it. Believe me, I test for that every single patch. Maybe it's some proprietary solution that approximates it. Whatever this technique is, the results speak for themselves. There's single points of light spotlighting areas of the game world in a way that made me stop and look at spaces I've walked through 100 times before. The dark areas are actually really freaking dark now. There's contrast that didn't exist before, and that contrast is what makes a scene feel real instead of game-like. The shadows deserve their own mention because they went from one of the weakest parts of the game's visuals to one of the strongest in a single patch. They're sharp when you're close to a light source, and soft where distance or diffusion would soften them. They interact with the new lighting in a way that creates depth and blind spots in interiors. Now it's also having a tangible impact on the gameplay too. I struggled with the realistic shadows and darkness in FPS combat, but I'm not complaining about it because the immersion is great, even if it was kinda inconvenient. In the back of large rooms, or in dark hallways without a direct lighting source, I couldn't tell if there were any enemies there with a quick glance. A lot of times I just shot to see if I'd hit anything because I remember something being in that area before. And let me tell you, the ASD facilities are just dripping with even more of that sci-fi horror-inspired realism now. Seriously, it's added so much to the creepy atmosphere of that place. I haven't done the Valakar since the update, but it's probably spectacular. Now that we've got the lamp update for cockpits, I can imagine we'll start seeing dedicated helmets with that same feature for the ground game. I know there's some rare optics attachments that have a light enhancement feature in the game already, and I wish I still had one because they're actually really useful now. And sure, I could lower my graphical settings, but I'll never do that to get an edge in Star Citizen. I think that's against everything this game is trying to be. And beyond lighting, there are materials updates in this patch too. 4.7's patch notes show they did a texture pass on all the weapons. That tracks. I can totally see it. They didn't stop there because something changed with how the engine renders surface properties, and the difference is staggering. All the textures on clothing, all of the textures on surfaces are in stunning detail now. I can look at the surface and tell you what it's made of before I even think about it. Metal really pops now with reflections if it's not all beat up and dull. I'd bet money most of the textures were redone or upscaled in some way. Wood, composite materials, synthetic fabrics, all of them have a visual identity that they just didn't have before. The way light interacts with these surfaces, the subtle variations in how they reflect or absorb it, creates a level of material fidelity that makes the game world feel physical, in a way it never has. Star Citizen's approach is the complete opposite of a game like Call of Duty or Marathon, where they want highly oversaturated graphics to keep mobile phone-addicted gamers engaged. One other thing I noticed, and shout out to Keenan from Sano Games for pointing it out to me, are the changes to asteroids. The asteroids in Nyx are significantly more jagged than any others we've seen before this patch. They used to be all rounded and mostly avoided hard creases. I think this change is a consequence of the Genesis planetary tech. Genesis solved their problems when making jagged mountain peaks without heavily distorting textures, and I'm pretty sure it's what's happening here too. I'm running all of this on ultra settings, and I'd recommend you do the same if your hardware can handle it. Even just to see this, the gap between graphic settings in 4.7 is wider than it's ever been. These lighting improvements seem to scale with your settings, and at Ultra you're seeing the full intent of whatever CIG's graphics team has been working on. I can hear the comments already, it's probably a slideshow when you do that, right? This is incredible, but 4.7 is the most performant version of Star Citizen I've ever experienced. At this point, I've nearly 30 hours in the game since the patch went live, and it's amazing. Even while in Orson, standing in the starport and staring into the city in the open air used to bring down my frames to around the low 40s on Ultra, now I'm getting frames in the mid 50s with all these improvements too. I really don't know how much of Squadron 42's engine optimizations are in the game now, and I'm willing to bet it's only partially incorporated or they'd have celebrated the milestone. I think that means this can probably get even better. I don't want to overhype it, but I think it's a major win. A surprise to be sure, but a welcomed one. The increased fidelity and major performance uplift is the most surprising thing because outside of Arc Raiders, a title that took 6 years to make by the way, I've yet to see a well-optimized Unreal Engine 5 game. Borderlands 4 and The Outer Worlds 2 were notoriously awful when it came to taxing systems. None of these changes matter if it makes the game unplayable. The engine team is doing incredible things now with Star Engine. The fact that CIG dropped these changes without a single word of hype is either the most gangster or the most bizarre decision they've made this year. Either way, the work speaks for itself, and I really don't see anyone else talking about it. If you stepped away from Star Citizen a while ago, this might be the patch that makes it worth logging back in just to look around. And if you've been here the whole time, crank your settings to Ultra, walk into a station interior and pay attention to the lighting. You'll see what I'm talking about. The future's so bright and dark, I gotta wear shades. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the verse.